My own daughter called 911 and told them I was trespassing in the house I spent 30 years buying for her. Officer, he's refusing to leave, Michelle said, her voice sharp with disgust. I've asked him repeatedly to respect my boundaries. My boundaries. In the house I built with factory wages and bleeding hands. The cop shifted uncomfortably, looking at my work boots, then at her BMW. Sir, do you have somewhere else to go? I pulled out my phone instead of answering. 3 decades of sacrifice had taught me patience. Michelle was about to learn what those 30 years had really cost her. Actually, officer, I need to make a quick call first. My voice was steady, controlled. To my real estate attorney, Michelle's face went white. If you've ever wondered how far a parent's love can stretch before it snaps completely, stick around. This story will change how you think about family forever. Let me back up and tell you how we got here. How a man who worked 3 jobs to give his daughter everything ended up being treated like a criminal in his own home. It started 6 months ago when Michelle finished her cardiology residency at Chicago Memorial. Dr. Michelle Thompson. She never let anyone forget the title. 4 years of undergraduate, 4 years of medical school, 3 years of residency. Every penny of that $380,000 education came from my factory wages at Caterpillar, $14 an hour. That's what I made for 30 years, building engines and saving every cent I could squeeze from those paychecks. While other guys bought trucks or took vacations, I lived in a studio apartment and ate ramen, so Michelle could have her dream house in the medical district, $720,000. That's what the Colonial cost in 2018 when she started med school. 2 stories, 4 bedrooms, walking distance to the hospital where she'd eventually work. I remember signing those papers, my signature shaky from exhaustion after pulling a double shift. Thanks, Dad, she'd said then, hugging me tight. I'll pay you back someday. Someday never came. Instead, Michelle moved her fiancé Jonathan into the house. Dr. Jonathan Clark, another cardiologist from a family of surgeons. Old money, country club money, the kind of people who summered in the Hamptons and never set foot in a factory. Then came my accident in January. Herniated discs L4 and L5, lifting a transmission without help because they'd cut our crew from 6 to 4. Workers' comp covered the surgery, but not the 3 months of recovery. Not the lost wages when you're living paycheck to paycheck at 62. Michelle's solution was generous, she said. You can stay in the basement until you're back on your feet, Dad. Just temporarily. The basement. Concrete floors, 1 small window, a space heater that barely worked. She gave me a folding cot from Walmart and pointed to the utility sink where I could wash up. Just don't use the main bathroom when Jonathan's here, she said. And maybe keep it down in the mornings. He's not used to, noise. Noise. Like my existence was an inconvenience. But I told myself it was temporary. I told myself she was just stressed with her new job, making $400,000 a year, saving hearts, while her father's heart was breaking in the basement below. The rules started small. Don't park in the driveway when her colleagues might visit. Don't answer the door if someone knocks. Don't come upstairs during her dinner parties. It's just easier this way, Dad, she explained, not meeting my eyes. My friends don't really understand blue-collar stuff. Blue-collar stuff. 30 years of building the engines that powered America, reduced to stuff that embarrassed her. I kept my mouth shut and followed her rules. Ate my meals on a TV tray in the basement. Watched the news on an old tablet. Volume low, so I wouldn't disturb the doctors. Upstairs discussing wine pairings and vacation homes. The worst part wasn't the cold or the isolation. It was hearing her laugh with Jonathan about their future plans for the house. Never Dad's house or the house Dad bought me. Just the house, like it had always been theirs. She had no idea I kept every receipt, every bank statement from those 30 years of saving, every proof of payment, every wire transfer, every document that showed exactly who had sacrificed what, for whom. 3 months stretched into 6. My back healed, but Michelle's attitude toward me only got worse. She started timing my comings and goings, leaving passive-aggressive notes about cleanliness standards and appropriate behavior for shared living spaces. Shared, like I was a tenant instead of the man who'd given her everything. The breaking point came last Tuesday. I was coming up from the basement to grab some coffee when Michelle's hospital colleagues arrived for a dinner party. 4 couples, all doctors, all dressed like they were attending a charity gala instead of eating takeout Chinese. I tried to slip past quietly, but Dr. Sarah Williams, the chief of cardiology, smiled and asked, "Michelle, aren't you going to introduce us to your father?" The silence stretched like a guitar string about to snap. Michelle's face flushed red, then white, then red again. "Oh, he was just leaving," she stammered. "Dad, weren't you heading out?" I wasn't. I'd just gotten home from a physical therapy appointment, still wearing my work clothes because that's all I owned. But I nodded and headed for the door, feeling 8 pairs of educated eyes following my exit. That night, Michelle cornered me in the basement. "We need to talk about boundaries," she said, arms crossed. "This isn't working anymore." Boundaries. The magic word that meant I'd become too inconvenient for her new life. But you know what wasn't working? A daughter who'd forgotten that boundaries work both ways. And I was about to remind her of a boundary she'd never considered, the one between gratitude and entitlement. Because tomorrow morning, Dr. Michelle Thompson was going to learn something they don't teach in medical school. The difference between owning a house and actually owning a house. The next morning, everything exploded. I was upstairs making coffee, my one allowed hour in the kitchen before Michelle's day started, when I heard voices at the front door. Jonathan's parents had arrived for their monthly visit. Dr. Richard Clark and his wife Patricia, both retired surgeons from Boston. Old money, so old it had dust on it. "Michelle, darling," Patricia's voice carried through the foyer, "we brought those property listings for the summer house in Martha's Vineyard. Jonathan said you two were finally ready to invest in real estate." Real estate. With my money, in the house I'd bought them. I tried to slip back downstairs, but my damn back seized up halfway to the basement door. I grabbed the banister, gritting my teeth as the spasm hit. "George?" Dr. Richard Clark's voice was confused. "George Thompson? From the Caterpillar plant?" My blood went cold. He knew me. 25 years ago, I'd installed the engine in his first Mercedes at the dealership where I moonlighted weekends. He'd been condescending then, treating me like furniture that happened to speak. "You work here now?" he asked, genuinely puzzled. Before I could answer, Michelle appeared like a tornado in scrubs. "Dad, what are you doing up here?" Her voice was ice-wrapped in panic. "I thought we discussed this." The Clarks exchanged glances. Patricia's perfectly Botoxed face registered something between confusion and distaste. "Michelle," Jonathan's mother said slowly, "is this man living here?" The silence stretched until it screamed. Michelle's career, her engagement, her carefully constructed image, all hanging on how she answered that question. "He's just staying temporarily," Michelle said, her voice getting shriller. "He had an accident and needs somewhere to recover." "In the basement?" Dr. Clark asked, noticing my pillow and blanket visible through the open door. That's when Michelle snapped. "Yes, in the basement!" She exploded, whirling on me. "Because he can't afford his own place and he's embarrassing me. My fiancé's parents are surgeons. What will they think if they see you limping around in your work clothes?" The words hit like physical blows. Embarrassing her, can't afford his own place, in front of the very people whose approval she craved more than her own father's dignity. Jonathan stepped forward, his face flushed. "Michelle, maybe we should—" "No!" She was past caring now, 31 years of suppressed shame pouring out. "I'm tired of pretending this is normal. I'm tired of hiding the fact that my father is a factory worker who lives in my basement because he never planned for his future. Never planned for my future. The woman standing in the house I'd bought her, wearing scrubs I'd paid for, with a medical degree I'd financed, telling virtual strangers that I'd failed to plan ahead." Dr. Clark cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should come back another time." "No, please don't leave," Michelle said, desperation creeping into her voice. "Dad was just going out anyway." "Weren't you, Dad?" I looked at her, really looked at her. Saw the woman I'd raised, the little girl who used to sit on my lap, while I read her stories about brave princesses and noble knights. Saw what 30 years of sacrifice had bought me. "I was," I said quietly. "I have some calls to make." Patricia Clark sniffed. "Well, I certainly hope this situation resolves itself soon. It's not exactly the environment we'd envisioned for Jonathan." Michelle's face crumpled. "It will. I promise. Dad, we'll talk about this later, okay? About finding you somewhere more appropriate. Appropriate. Like a nursing home or a homeless shelter. Somewhere she wouldn't have to explain my existence to her new family." I nodded and headed for the door, grabbing my jacket from the closet. Behind me, I heard Michelle's voice, bright and fake, trying to salvage the morning. So, about those Martha's Vineyard properties. I sat in my beat-up Honda Civic in the driveway for a full 10 minutes, watching through the window as Michelle served coffee and pastries to the people who mattered more than I did. Watching her laugh and gesture, performing the role of successful daughter, while erasing every trace of the man who'd made it possible. That's when I made the call that would change everything. Tony, it's George Thompson. Remember me from the old neighborhood? Tony Rodriguez. My childhood friend who'd pulled himself up from the same factory life, but through law school instead of medical school. Who'd never forgotten where he came from or who'd helped him get there. George! Jesus, it's been years. How are you doing? I need a real estate attorney, Tony, and I need one today. What's going on? I looked back at the house. My house. The house I'd bled for, saved for, sacrificed everything for. The house where my daughter was at this very moment, explaining to her future in-laws why her father was such an embarrassment. I'm about to teach my daughter something they don't cover in medical school, I said. The legal difference between living in a house and owning one. Because Michelle was right about one thing. This situation was going to resolve itself very soon, just not the way she expected. Tony's office was in a strip mall 20 minutes from the medical district. Nothing fancy, just honest law for working people who couldn't afford downtown rates. The kind of place Michelle would never set foot in. So let me get this straight, Tony said, spreading documents across his desk. You bought the house outright in 2018, $720,000. Cash, every penny from my savings, I confirmed. 30 years of overtime and side jobs. Tony whistled low. And it's still in your name? That's what I need you to tell me. He pulled up the Cook County property records on his computer, typed in the address, waited. George, he said slowly, according to the county, you are the sole legal owner of 847 Maple Street. No joint ownership, no transfer of deed, no nothing. My heart started pounding. But Michelle lives there, has for 6 years. Living somewhere and owning it are two different things. Tony leaned back in his chair. Did you ever sign any paperwork transferring ownership to her? I thought back through 6 years of medical school residency, her moving in with Jonathan. She said we'd handle the legal stuff later, for tax purposes. Something about gift tax limits. Smart girl. Probably saved you both some money. Tony's expression was grim. But George, legally speaking, she's been living in your house as your guest. And guests can be asked to leave. The words hung in the air like a loaded gun. You mean I could evict her? Sell the house? Do whatever you want with your own property? Tony nodded. Absolutely. It's yours. I stared at the computer screen showing my name in black and white. George Thompson, sole owner. Not Dr. Michelle Thompson. Not Jonathan Clark. Me. There's something else, Tony said, pulling out another document. The property's worth more now. Market's been crazy. Conservative estimate? 900,000, maybe 950. Nearly $250,000 in equity. From the house I'd bought with factory wages, while my daughter earned more in 2 months than I made in a year. What would happen if I sold it? Tony raised an eyebrow. You'd walk away with the full proceeds. Minus taxes, of course. But George, that's your daughter we're talking about. My daughter? Who called the police on me this morning? Who told strangers I was embarrassing her? Who wanted to ship me off somewhere appropriate so she could play house with her rich fiancé? Tony, I need you to do something for me. What's that? I want you to list the house. Today? He sat back. George, that's a big decision. Maybe you should sleep on it. I've been sleeping on a cot in a basement for 6 months, I said. While my daughter planned her future in the house I bought her. I'm done sleeping. Tony was quiet for a long moment. You sure about this? Once we list it, there's no taking it back quietly. I thought about Michelle's face this morning, the shame in her voice when she talked about her embarrassing father, the way she'd looked through me like I was invisible. List it, I said. And Tony? I want to choose the buyer personally. That's unusual, but it's your property. He pulled out a legal pad. Any particular requirements? I smiled for the first time in months. A real smile, not the careful one I'd been wearing around Michelle. I want you to call Dr. Patricia Hayes at Northwestern Memorial. She's head of cardiology there. Mention that a property just became available in the medical district. Prime location, perfect for a physician. Tony's pen stopped moving. Patricia Hayes? Isn't she Michelle's biggest professional rival? They went to medical school together. Patricia got the department head position Michelle wanted. Understanding dawned on Tony's face. Jesus, George. Dr. Hayes has been looking for a house in that neighborhood for 2 years, I continued. She'll pay top dollar, no questions asked, and she'll pay fast. Tony shook his head, but he was writing. You know this is going to blow up Michelle's world, right? My world's been blown up for 6 months, I said, standing to leave. Maybe it's time someone else experienced some turbulence. I walked to the door, then turned back. Oh, and Tony? When Dr. Hayes asks about the timeline, tell her the current occupants will be out by the end of the month, whether they know it yet or not, because Michelle was about to learn something they definitely don't teach in medical school. Always read the fine print on your living arrangements. 3 days later, my phone rang at 6 a.m., Dr. Patricia Hayes herself. Mr. Thompson? This is Patricia Hayes from Northwestern Memorial. Your attorney mentioned you have a property available in the medical district. Her voice was crisp, professional, the voice of someone accustomed to making life or death decisions quickly. That's correct, Dr. Hayes. 847 Maple Street. 4 bedrooms, walking distance to Chicago Memorial. I know the address, she said, and I heard papers rustling. I've been watching that neighborhood for years. When would be convenient for a showing? How about this afternoon? Say 2 o'clock? Perfect. Mr. Thompson, may I ask, is this related to the Michelle Thompson who works at Chicago Memorial? I paused. You know my daughter? We're familiar with each other's work. Her tone was carefully neutral. I assume she's relocating? Something like that. After I hung up, I called Tony. Patricia Hayes bit, I told him. She's coming to see the house today. George, you realize Michelle's going to be at work during the day. She has no idea this is happening. That's the point, Tony. I need you to prepare the paperwork. Full cash offer, closing in 10 days. Can we do that? If Dr. Hayes is serious about buying, yeah. But George, legally, I have to advise you to give Michelle some notice. How much notice am I legally required to give? Tony sighed. In Illinois, 30 days for a month-to-month tenant. But since there's no formal lease agreement and she's not paying rent, she's a guest in my house. Technically, yes. You could ask her to leave immediately, but I'm not going to. I'm going to give her exactly 30 days, starting from the day the sale closes. Dr. Hayes arrived precisely at 2 p.m. in a black Tesla Model S. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 45, with the kind of confidence that comes from saving lives for a living. Mr. Thompson, she said, shaking my hand firmly, thank you for this opportunity. I walked her through the house, watching her eyes light up at the hardwood floors I'd refinished myself, the crown molding I'd installed working weekends. She asked intelligent questions about the electrical system, the plumbing, the roof. The kitchen is stunning, she said, running her hand along the granite countertops. And this location is perfect for my commute to Northwestern. We ended up in the living room where Michelle's medical degree hung prominently on the wall next to Jonathan's. Northwestern Medical School, Dr. Hayes noted. Class of 2021. I was on the admissions committee that year. Michelle graduated summa cum laude, I said. Yes, I remember her application. Very impressive academic record. She paused. May I ask why she's selling? She's not selling. I am. Dr. Hayes raised an eyebrow. I see. And she's aware of this decision? Dr. Hayes, I'm 62 years old. I spent 30 years saving every penny to buy this house for my daughter's future. Now she's established in her career, and I'm ready to make some changes in my life. It wasn't exactly a lie. I was ready to make changes, starting with where I lived and how I was treated. The asking price is $750,000, I continued. Cash only, 10-day closing. That's very reasonable for this neighborhood, she said, pulling out her phone. Mr. Thompson, I'd like to make an offer. Full asking price, as is condition, closing in 7 days if possible. 7 days? I've been looking for the right property for 2 years, she said. This is it. When can we start the paperwork? I thought about Michelle at the hospital right now, probably complaining to her colleagues about her embarrassing father living in her basement. We can start today, I said. I'll have my attorney draw up the contracts. Because in 7 days, Dr. Michelle Thompson was going to discover that living in someone else's house comes with certain risks, especially when that someone finally decides to take their life back. The closing happened on a Tuesday morning at Tony's office. Dr. Hayes arrived with a cashier's check for $750,000 and a smile that told me she knew exactly what this sale meant in the medical community. "Mr. Thompson," she said, signing the final documents, "I want you to know I'll take excellent care of this house." "I'm sure you will, Dr. Hayes. It's been a good home." What I didn't tell her was that the real show hadn't even started yet. See, selling the house was just step one of my plan. Step two was making sure the whole medical community knew about it. And step three? Well, that's where things got interesting. That afternoon, I drove to the offices of Channel 7 News. Not the main building downtown, but their Community Interest Bureau in Schaumburg, the place where they filmed those feel-good human interest stories that ran during the morning show. "I'd like to speak to someone about a story," I told the receptionist. 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Jennifer Walsh, a producer who specialized in local community features. "So, Mr. Thompson, tell me about this scholarship fund you want to start." "It's called the George Thompson Educational Fund for Working Class Students," I said, pulling out the paperwork Tony had helped me prepare. $700,000 to help kids from blue-collar families pay for college. Jennifer's eyes widened. $700,000? That's a significant amount. "I just sold my house," I explained. "Figured it was time to give back to the community that supported me for 30 years. "And you worked at Caterpillar?" 30 years. Started on the line, worked my way up to senior assembly. 3 jobs most of that time to save money for my daughter's education." Jennifer was taking notes now. "Your daughter went to college?" "Medical school, Northwestern. She's a cardiologist now at Chicago Memorial. She must be so proud of what you're doing with this scholarship." I paused, choosing my words carefully. "She doesn't know yet." I wanted it to be a surprise. That wasn't exactly true. Michelle was going to be surprised, all right, just not in the way Jennifer was thinking. "Mr. Thompson, this is exactly the kind of story our viewers love. An immigrant father who sacrificed everything for his daughter's education, now giving back to help other working-class kids achieve their dreams." Jennifer was practically glowing. "Would you be willing to do an on-camera interview?" I'd be honored. The interview was scheduled for Thursday morning. That gave me just enough time to handle the other part of my plan. Wednesday evening, I called Michelle. "Dad, where are you? I came home and your stuff is gone from the basement." "I moved out, Michelle. Found a nice place at Riverside Senior Community." "Oh," she sounded confused. "Well, that's good. I mean, you'll probably be more comfortable there." More comfortable than a basement cot. The bar was pretty low. "Michelle, I need to tell you something. I sold the house." Silence. Complete, total silence. "You... what?" "I sold 847 Maple Street. Closed yesterday. The new owner takes possession on Friday." "Dad, that's not funny." "I'm not joking, sweetheart. Dr. Patricia Hayes bought it. I believe you two know each other." The sound that came through the phone wasn't quite a scream, more like the noise a balloon makes when you let the air out too fast. "Patricia Hayes?" "Patricia Hayes bought my house?" "My house, Michelle. It was always my house." But Jonathan and I live here. Our engagement party is next month. His parents are flying in from Boston. Then I suggest you find somewhere else to hold it. You have until Friday to move out." "You can't do this. This is insane. I'm calling a lawyer." "You should call a good one," I said calmly, "because the paperwork's all legal." Tony Rodriguez handled it. "You remember Tony from the old neighborhood?" More silence, then quietly. "Why?" "Because you called the police on me, Michelle, in the house I bought for you, because you told Jonathan's parents I was embarrassing you, because you decided I wasn't good enough for your new life." "Dad, I'm sorry about that, but there's no but, sweetheart. I gave you everything I had for 30 years. You gave me a cot in the basement and threatened to have me arrested. Where am I supposed to go?" "I don't know, Michelle." "Maybe you can ask Dr. Hayes if she needs a tenant." I hung up and turned off my phone. Tomorrow morning, Channel 7 would air their story about the inspiring immigrant father who sold his house to fund scholarships for working-class kids. The same morning, Dr. Michelle Thompson would have to explain to her colleagues why her biggest professional rival now owned her house. But tonight, I was going to sleep in a real bed, in my own apartment, where nobody could call me embarrassing. For the first time in 6 months, I felt like I could breathe again. Thursday morning, I put on my best shirt, the one I'd worn to Michelle's medical school graduation, and drove to the Channel 7 studios. Jennifer Walsh met me in the lobby with a cameraman and sound technician. Mr. Thompson, we're so excited about this story. Our viewers are going to love it. The interview took place in Riverside Park, where I'd been taking walks since moving to the senior community. The morning light was perfect, Jennifer said, and the setting reinforced the humble American success story angle. So, George, Jennifer began, the camera rolling, tell us about the George Thompson Educational Fund. Well, Jennifer, I worked 30 years at the Caterpillar plant here in Chicago. Assembly line, engine installation, whatever needed doing. During those years, I saved every penny I could to help my daughter become a doctor. And now that she's established in her career, you're giving back to other families? That's right. $700,000 to help working-class kids afford college. Kids whose parents work double shifts and side jobs, just like I did. Jennifer's face lit up. Face lit. $700,000, that's an incredible amount. How did you accumulate that much on a factory salary? 3 jobs for most of those 30 years, I said. Caterpillar during the week, weekend work at the Mercedes dealership, and nights cleaning office buildings. I lived in a studio apartment, drove the same car for 15 years, never took a vacation. That's remarkable sacrifice. Your daughter must be incredibly proud. I smiled. She's going to see this interview at the same time as everyone else. I wanted it to be a surprise. What I didn't mention was that Michelle would be seeing it while packing boxes, trying to figure out where she and Jonathan were going to live after Friday. Tell us about some of the students who'll benefit from this scholarship. I pulled out the applications I'd already started reviewing. Maria Gonzalez. Her father works 2 restaurant jobs to support 4 kids. She wants to study nursing at UIC. Tommy Wilson. His mom's a single parent, works at Walmart overnight so she can be home when he gets out of school. He's headed for engineering at Illinois State. Jennifer wiped her eyes. These stories are just incredible. What made you decide to focus specifically on working-class families? Because I know what it's like to choose between paying rent and buying your kids' school supplies. I know what it's like to work Christmas Day because you need the overtime pay. These families don't have trust funds or college savings accounts. They have determination and love, but sometimes that's not enough. The camera zoomed in as I continued. Every kid deserves a shot at the American dream, not just the ones born into it. George, you're clearly a man who understands the value of education. Your daughter is Dr. Michelle Thompson at Chicago Memorial, correct? That's right. Cardiologist. Graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern Medical School. She must have learned her work ethic from you. I paused, choosing my words carefully. I hope I taught her that everything worthwhile requires sacrifice. That success isn't just about what you achieve, it's about remembering who helped you get there. After the interview, Jennifer walked me to my car. Mr. Thompson, this is going to air tomorrow morning on the 7 a.m. show, and we'll run it again during our noon community spotlight. I have a feeling this story is going to get picked up by other stations too. She was right. By Friday afternoon, the story had been shared on 3 local news websites and picked up by the Chicago Tribune's community section. The headline read, "Factory Worker Sells House to Fund Scholarships for Working-Class Students." But the real fireworks started when the medical community got wind of it. Dr. Sarah Williams, Chief of Cardiology at Chicago Memorial, called me personally Friday evening. "Mr. Thompson, this is Dr. Williams from Chicago Memorial. I saw your story on the news today. Thank you, Dr. Williams. I hope it inspires other people to give back. It certainly has inspired me. Mr. Thompson, I had no idea Michelle's father was the man behind this incredible scholarship fund. She's never mentioned your background. I'll bet she hadn't. We'd love to honor you at our upcoming Medical Staff Appreciation Dinner," Dr. Williams continued. "Would you be available to speak about your journey as an immigrant parent? I think our physicians could learn a lot from your story." "I'd be honored, Dr. Williams." After I hung up, I sat back in my comfortable armchair, not a basement cot, and smiled. Tomorrow, Dr. Michelle Thompson would walk into Chicago Memorial to discover that her embarrassing father had become the hospital's most celebrated parent. And she'd be walking in as a homeless woman whose professional rival now owned her house. Sometimes justice has a sense of humor. Friday morning came with a knock on my apartment door at Riverside Senior Community. It was Mrs. Chen from next door, holding her tablet with a huge smile. "George, you're on the Channel 7 website. Look at all these comments." I scrolled through dozens of messages. This man is a true American hero. What an inspiration. His daughter is so lucky to have a father like this. Lucky, if only they knew. My phone started ringing at 8 a.m. The first call was from the Chicago Tribune wanting to do a follow-up story. The second was from WGN Radio, asking if I'd come on their morning show. The third call changed everything. Mr. Thompson? This is Dr. Kevin Martinez, Chief of Staff at Chicago Memorial. I just watched your interview, and I have to say I'm deeply moved by your story. Thank you, Dr. Martinez. I'm calling because I'd like to invite you to speak at our quarterly medical staff meeting next Tuesday. We have 200 physicians who could benefit from hearing about sacrifice and dedication. I'd be honored. Excellent. And Mr. Thompson, I look forward to meeting the man who raised Dr. Thompson. She's never mentioned having such an inspiring father. After he hung up, I wondered if Michelle had seen the news yet. I didn't have to wonder long. My phone exploded with text messages. At 8:47 a.m., Dad, what have you done? The whole hospital is talking about you. Patricia Hayes is texting me about moving out. Call me now. I didn't call. Instead, I drove to Chicago Memorial to drop off scholarship applications at Dr. Martinez's office. The timing was purely coincidental, of course. The hospital lobby was buzzing. At the information desk, I heard a volunteer explaining to visitors, "Oh yes, that's Dr. Thompson's father. The one from the news story. Isn't it wonderful?" I was heading to the elevator when I heard my name called. "Mr. Thompson." It was Dr. Williams, hurrying across the lobby with 3 other physicians. "We just saw your interview. This is incredible. Dr. Patricia Hayes called this morning. She mentioned she just bought a house from you. She said you're starting a scholarship fund? That's right. $700,000 for working-class students. That's extraordinary. You know, we had no idea about Michelle's background. She's never talked about her family." One of the other doctors stepped forward. "I'm Dr. Roberts from Emergency Medicine. My father was a coal miner in Pennsylvania. Stories like yours remind us where we came from. Where we came from shapes who we become," I said. "I just hope the next generation remembers that." Dr. Williams nodded enthusiastically. "We absolutely must have you speak to our residents. They need to understand the sacrifices their families made." That's when the elevator doors opened and Michelle stepped out. She froze when she saw me surrounded by her colleagues. Her face went through several colors before settling on pale green. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "I was just delivering some scholarship applications to Dr. Martinez," I said calmly. "Dr. Williams invited me to speak at the medical staff meeting." Michelle's eyes darted between her colleagues and me. I didn't know you were Mr. Thompson," Dr. Williams interrupted. "We were just telling your father how proud you must be of his scholarship fund. A factory worker sacrificing everything for his daughter's education, then giving back to help other families. It's the most inspiring story we've heard in years." Michelle's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "Michelle," Dr. Roberts added, "you never told us your father was such a remarkable man. $700,000. That's more than most of our physicians donate in their entire careers." Yes, he's..." Michelle stumbled over the words. "Very generous. And selling his house to fund it." Dr. Williams continued, "Though I suppose it worked out well since Dr. Hayes was looking for property in that neighborhood." Michelle's face crumpled. "Actually, about that." "Oh, Michelle!" Another voice called from across the lobby. Dr. Patricia Hayes was striding toward us, looking like she'd just won the lottery. "I wanted to thank you again for the smooth transition. The house is absolutely perfect." "Dr. Hayes," Dr. Williams said, "you must be so excited about your new place." "Thrilled," Patricia replied, her eyes sparkling with something that looked suspiciously like mischief. "And I have to say, Michelle handled the situation with such grace. Not everyone would be so understanding about having to find new living arrangements on such short notice." The group of doctors looked confused. Dr. Williams glanced between Michelle and Patricia. "I'm sorry, I don't understand. Michelle, aren't... Michelle and her fiancé are relocating," I said smoothly. "New chapter in their lives." Michelle shot me a look that could have melted steel. But she couldn't contradict me without explaining that she'd been living in her father's house while treating him like a basement tenant. "Well," Dr. Williams said awkwardly, sensing tension but not understanding it, "that's nice." "Yes?" Patricia said with a smile that was all teeth. I'm sure they'll find somewhere lovely. The rental market is very competitive right now, but I'm confident they'll land on their feet. Rental market. The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Michelle excused herself and practically ran toward the stairwell. I watched her go, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. The breaking point came Tuesday evening, right after I'd finished speaking to the medical staff at Chicago Memorial. The presentation had gone better than I'd imagined. 200 physicians had given me a standing ovation when I finished talking about sacrifice, gratitude, and remembering where you come from. Dr. Martinez personally thanked me and announced that the hospital would be making a matching donation to my scholarship fund. I was walking to my car in the Riverside Senior Community parking lot when I saw her BMW sitting under the streetlight. Michelle was leaning against the hood, still in her scrubs, looking like she hadn't slept in days. We need to talk, she said when she saw me. I think we've said everything that needs saying. No, we haven't. Her voice was sharp, desperate. Do you have any idea what you've done to my life? I unlocked my apartment door and turned to face her. I gave you 30 years of my life, Michelle. You gave me a basement cot and a police threat. I'd say we're even. Even? She followed me inside, her voice rising. I'm homeless, Dad. Jonathan broke off our engagement. Dr. Hayes is my boss's golf partner, and she's telling everyone how gracefully I handled being evicted. You're not homeless. You're a doctor making $400,000 a year. I'm sure you can afford rent somewhere. That's not the point, she was shouting now. You destroyed my reputation. Everyone at the hospital thinks I'm some ungrateful monster who threw her hero father into the basement. Aren't you? The words hung between us like a slap. Michelle's face crumpled, and for a moment she looked like the little girl I used to read bedtime stories to. I never meant for it to be like that, she whispered. I was just... Jonathan's family has so much money, and they're so sophisticated, and I was embarrassed about having a factory worker for a father. Yes! The admission burst out of her like a confession. Yes, okay? I was embarrassed. I worked so hard to fit into their world, and then you were there with your work clothes and your cane, and I panicked. I sat down in my comfortable armchair and looked at my daughter. Really looked at her. She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks, looking nothing like the polished cardiologist who'd called the police on me. Michelle, do you know what embarrasses me? She shook her head. Having a daughter who thinks where she came from is something to hide. Having a daughter who would rather call the cops on her father than introduce him to her friends. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry, Dad. I know I messed up, but you can't just destroy my whole life because I made a mistake. A mistake? I stood up, feeling anger rise in my chest for the first time since this all started. Michelle, you didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. For 6 months, you made the same choice every single day. Behind Michelle, I noticed movement at my door. 3 of my neighbors from the senior community had gathered outside. Mrs. Chen, Mr. Rodriguez, and Mrs. Walsh. The walls were thin, and Michelle's shouting had drawn an audience. You want to know what's really embarrassing? I continued, raising my voice slightly, explaining to my new friends here why my successful daughter never visits. Why she never calls. Why the man who paid for her medical school lives in a senior community while she lives in a house he bought her. Dad, please, just listen. No, you listen. My voice was steel now. Do you know what Dr. Martinez told me tonight after my speech? He said he wished more physicians understood the sacrifice their families made. He said you could learn something from my example. Michelle's face went white. He didn't say that. He did. Right before he asked me to speak at the resident orientation next month. Something about making sure the next generation of doctors understands gratitude. You can't, she whispered. Please, Dad. If you keep doing this, I'll never recover professionally. People are already talking. Let them talk. Mrs. Chen cleared her throat from the doorway. George, is everything all right? We heard shouting. Michelle spun around, realizing for the first time that we had witnesses. Mrs. Chen, this is my daughter Michelle, the doctor I told you about. Mrs. Chen's expression cooled noticeably. Oh, the one who... Yes, I said simply. That's her. Michelle looked around the room, at my comfortable furniture, my framed photos of her graduation, the scholarship fund paperwork on my desk, the 3 elderly neighbors watching her with expressions of disapproval. "This isn't over," she said, her voice shaking. "I'm going to figure out a way to fix this." "There's nothing to fix, Michelle. This is just what consequences look like." She turned to leave, then stopped at the door. "Jonathan was right," she said, her voice bitter. "He said you were manipulating me, using guilt to control my life." "Jonathan's opinion doesn't matter anymore," I replied calmly. "He's not your fiancé. And as for manipulation, I gave you a house, an education, and 30 years of unconditional love. You gave me a basement cot and a police threat. Which one of us was manipulating the other?" She left without another word, her heels clicking angrily across the parking lot. Mr. Rodriguez shook his head as we watched her BMW speed away. "Some people don't appreciate what they have until it's gone." "Some people don't appreciate it even then," Mrs. Walsh added. I closed the door and sat back down in my chair. Outside, I could hear Michelle's car engine fading into the distance. For the first time in 6 months, my apartment felt truly peaceful. Tomorrow, I had 3 more scholarship interviews scheduled. Kids from working families who understood the value of sacrifice. Kids who would never call the police on the parents who loved them. 6 months later, I was sitting in the front row of the University of Illinois graduation ceremony, watching Maria Gonzalez walk across the stage to receive her nursing degree, the first recipient of the George Thompson Educational Fund for Working Class Students, the dean announced, graduating summa cum laude. Maria's father, Carlos, was crying openly beside me. He'd worked those 2 restaurant jobs for 4 years to help her through school, even after my scholarship covered tuition. "She did it," he whispered. "She actually did it." "You both did it," I corrected him, "just like your daughter will do it for her kids someday." After the ceremony, I drove back to Riverside Senior Community, where a stack of mail was waiting, 23 new scholarship applications for the fall semester, a letter from the Chicago Tribune asking for an interview on the 1-year anniversary of my story, and an invitation to speak at Northwestern Medical School's orientation. Northwestern, Michelle's alma mater. I was reviewing applications when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. "Mr. Thompson? This is Dr. Jennifer Walsh from Cook County Hospital. How can I help you, Dr. Walsh? I'm calling about your scholarship fund. I work in our emergency department, and I wanted to let you know that we have several residents who came from working class backgrounds. Your story has become something of a legend around here. I'm glad it's helpful. Actually, I'm calling because we'd like to establish a partnership. Cook County serves a lot of families like the ones you're helping. We'd like to create internship opportunities for your scholarship recipients." I smiled, thinking about Maria Gonzalez and Tommy Wilson and the 15 other kids who were thriving in college because someone believed working class families deserved a chance. "I'd love to discuss that, Dr. Walsh." After we hung up, I walked to my kitchen to make coffee. Through the window, I could see Mrs. Chen tending her garden, Mr. Rodriguez reading his newspaper on the bench, Mrs. Walsh feeding the ducks at the pond. My neighbors, my community, people who understood that dignity didn't come from a paycheck or a degree, but from how you treated the people who loved you. I was pouring my coffee when another call came in. This time I recognized the number. "Hello, Michelle. Dad?" Her voice was quiet, different than it had been 6 months ago. "I saw the Tribune article about the scholarship program expanding. 23 students starting college this fall. That's wonderful." She paused. "Dad, I've been thinking about what you said. About consequences and choices. And I got a job at Cook County Hospital. Emergency medicine. It's not as prestigious as Chicago Memorial, but the work feels more meaningful." I set down my coffee cup. Cook County served the working poor, the uninsured, the families like the one I'd come from. "That's good, Michelle. I wanted to ask, would it be possible for me to volunteer with the scholarship program? Maybe help with interviews or mentoring? I know I don't deserve it, but everyone deserves a second chance to do the right thing," I said quietly. "But it has to be genuine, Michelle. Not because you want to fix your reputation or make yourself feel better. It's genuine." Her voice was steady now. "I want to help kids whose parents work 3 jobs like you did. Kids who understand what sacrifice looks like." I looked out my window at the community garden where Carlos Gonzalez was teaching his granddaughter to plant tomatoes. At Mrs. Chen, helping a new resident carry groceries to her apartment. At the life I'd built from the ashes of my old one. "Come by this weekend," I said. "We'll talk." After I hung up, I opened my laptop and began reviewing the scholarship applications. 23 stories of determination and family love. 23 chances to prove that the American dream still belonged to anyone willing to work for it. And maybe, just maybe, one more chance for a father and daughter to remember what family really meant.